My name is Theo. I am the Public Policy Researcher for the Diocese of Southwark in the Justice, Peace and the Integrity of Creation Department, otherwise known as Public Policy. For this year, one of our departmental areas of focus looked at how churches are engaging with the issue of housing and homelessness, the latter of which is in part the byproduct of the housing crisis caused by the erosion of traditional affordable housing. Within the diocese, there are many areas undergoing regeneration. I'm going to move around and share this. That's for you. And over there. One more. You can pass it on. Many areas undergoing massive regeneration, resulting in the rise of new properties, some of which would be used as assets to maximise profit. Nevertheless, these new properties will still have people in need of spiritual food, community and belonging, and the church can provide this. So while some would be used as assets for profit, there will be those for whom these properties are homes, central to human well-being and flourishing. So whilst I was reflecting on not whether, but the extent to which the current housing crisis is certainly a crisis for the church, I equally had the reflection from Isaiah 35, verse 18. My people will live in peaceful dwelling places, in secure homes, in undisturbed places of rest. In reality, and to the average person not directly affected, when they, and I include myself in this, think about the housing crisis, we generally don't think about the effect that it has on churches. Throughout the ages, churches have and continue to be at the heart of many localised communities, challenging and dealing with the residual effects that bad socio-economic policies have on the lives of those they're called to serve. So therefore, while on the one hand, I certainly agree that the housing crisis is a crisis for churches, but also on the other hand, believe that it offers churches an opportunity to continue doing what it does best. So why is it a crisis for churches? It's a crisis because it's a moral issue that affects people, and mostly those in the middle or further down the socio-economic ladder. And often these people are the indigenous communities of many of the areas undergoing massive regeneration, or better known as gentrification. Many of these people will be priced out of the property and rental market, whilst also being gravely impacted by current and ongoing welfare reforms, bedroom tax, benefit caps, and so forth. Many of these people would have lived in what was traditionally affordable social housing, some of which within the diocese has been demolished or under threats of demolition in exchange for high-rise, exorbitantly priced luxury properties under the new jargon of affordable rents. But the question is, affordable for who? And when did 80% market value on rent become the just rate? I also interestingly live in the diocese, and I live in the borough of Southwark. I've lived there for most of my life, and with other parts of London that's undergoing massive regeneration. And as a Londoner in my early 30s, as Alison made reference to, as a youngish Londoner, I still live at home with my mum because I can't afford to rent privately, let alone get my foot onto the property ladder. So I live in the same council house that my sisters and I grew up in as children, now estimated to be worth $500,000. As a child, many of the people that I knew and grew up with lived in traditional, affordable social housing when they couldn't afford to buy a property. So my memories of the Walworth Road where I live was surrounded by estates, one of which is the infamous Haygate estate. I do have a picture of it somewhere. Has it been dispersed? Oh no, there it is, sorry. This was what it looked like when I was a child. Has everybody got one? Can everybody see one? I had family and friends who lived on this notoriously bad estate, which, irrespective of its reputation, was homes for them. At the time, or before demolition, the estate contained 1,100 flats that was home to approximately 3,000 people. some of whom capitalised on the right to buy as their stake on the property market, and also under the premise that the council will replace the depleted stock, which has never been proportionately matched. In fact, more people are encouraged to rent privately. So when the council announced that the estates would be demolished, their reason centred on the argument that the building was poorly constructed, low energy efficient, environmental issues were going on, added to the proliferation of criminal activities on this estate. Initially, when Southwark Council were exploring redevelopment plans in the late 1990s, there were plans for redevelopment under the auspice of Community Land Trust. Ironically, the council rejected this plan on the grounds that it would reduce the land value available to itself. So demolition started, and all the residents were dispersed around the country, uprooted from their communities and social network. There were tenants in this property who lived there since the estate was built in the 1970s. So you can imagine the residual impact of this. The churches close by participated in the consultation process, but ultimately couldn't stop the plans. This has also had an impact on the local schools. When you think about relocating people, we often don't think about the impact that it has on children who don't take part in the consultation and planning process, but yet forced to deal with the residual impact that comes with being uprooted from their local surroundings, from their schools and from their friends. The site is now known as the Elephant Park. More pictures. Sorry.
It doesn't look quite like that yet.
No, it doesn't look quite like that, but that's the plan. That's what it would look like. The site is now known as the Elephant Park, and it's being redeveloped by the developers Lend-Lease into 3,000 brand new homes, a new park which will be central London's largest for 70 years, retail space and community facilities. But the question is, affordable for who? I called last week just to inquire. I called last week to inquire about the prospects of purchasing one of these unfinished properties. I asked firstly about a one-bedroom flat and was informed that the starting price is £560,000. But to secure this property, I would need to pay $2,500 to get this unfinished property off the market, added to a 10% deposit, $56,000 within the first year, and then an additional $56,000 by 2018 when the property would be complete. So that's a total of $114,500. Then I asked if some of the properties would be up for social housing and was told that there would be option for shared ownership and some would be up for affordable rent under the responsibility of the Housing Association London and Quadrant, who would work in partnership with Southwark Council. But if the average income in London is $26,500, who on earth is going to be able to afford to live there? So I tried to confirm this with Southwark Council to discuss the practicalities of Section 106 in the Elephant Park to secure affordable housing. Unfortunately, nobody was able to help me, so I tried to get through to the housing manager there. Again, no answer. I wanted to find out the practicalities of how this would actually pan out. Would any be up for social housing? Then I found out from the council's website that of something that came out of their something that was at the heart of their allocations policy, and it came out of the 2009 Code of Guidance, fair and flexible statutory guidance on social housing allocation for London authorities local authorities in England, coupled with a consultation that also took place called Local Decisions, A Fairer Future for Social Housing. They said that extra priority would be given to working households and people with local connections. It's interesting, I thought, if they're going to give extra priority to working households, have they thought that there's also an increasing number of the working poor? A major contributing factor to that is a soaring cost of housing, added to life's other financial responsibilities and commitments. I also recently read a report that said that 25% of working households needed financial support to supplement their rent. At 80% market value for affordable rent, who would qualify to rent in the Elephant Park, even if you had local connections? What was also disheartening is that this didn't play a part when they were dispersing people around the place from the old Haygate estate. I suppose it all falls under the Conservative government's plans to demolish or abolish sink estates, which in itself got lots of people angered because it's condescending, labelling people, parents who lived on estates as bad and in need of parental classes, when in actual fact, if you think about it, the cause of many of these social problems are in part the products of bad policies. There are also further developments going on in the diocese. I will share this with you. Some of you would know, since we're in Woolwich, the old Ferrier estate. The old Ferrier estate also has similar issues to what Haygate had. And I also inquired about purchasing a property in what's now called the new Kidbrooke village. And interestingly, if I could afford to buy, I might just opt to buy in the new Kidbrooke village because properties were slightly cheaper. A one bedroom would range from 420,000 to 645,000, and a two bedroom would range from 495,000 to 645,000. So for me, my concern is that the overwhelming emphasis on moving away from a generation of renters to a generation of homeowners is not the answer to the housing crisis. We need a mixed economy in housing that reflects the needs of people, and I welcome the Mayor of London's plans to implement a London living rent. So on the other hand, as to why I think that the housing crisis offers churches an opportunity, I think it's a great opportunity for churches to draw on its rootedness in communities, to bear on the issues and the ripple effects that come along with some of the bad policies that have been made, by offering hope and healing and reconciliation. With a presence in every community, churches are a hub, or should be a vehicle, that bring people of all and no faith together on common issues. I've also brought along something else that's at the back there. Interestingly, in some of the areas, it might appear that the role that churches play may have dwindled in something which is done by other organisations. But the crisis gives churches the ability to take back ownership in doing what it does best, which is building relationships and ensuring that the voice and concerns of all those affected are heard, which brings together old and new communities together to foster a good relationship which is often damaged communities. In the recent project, this stuff, I brought loads at the back if you want to have a go, if you want to have a look at it. It showcases 10 of the redevelopment that's underway as part of the Mayor of London's London plan. And it illustrates the roles that churches have played in affected areas in fostering dialogue between people of faith and none, and communities and civil society groups. It's evident of what churches are really good at, which is seeking the welfare of all in spite of changes. So just to conclude, the emphasis here is on community cohesion, interaction between existing residents, the businesses, and emerging communities. Andy, I know I've upset you by moving around quite a bit. Oh, did it fall off? Oh no.